hockey fans. Welcome to the Across the Pond Hockey Podcast YouTube channel. If it's your first time here and you'd like to support us, please hit that subscribe button and that like button. It goes a long way in helping us develop the program. Before we get to tonight's episode, I have to take a minute to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with the China Hockey Group. The China Hockey Group is a family-oriented group of ice hockey leagues, training programs, and community initiatives geared towards developing hockey in Southeast Asia. From their incredible Junior Tigers program all the way up to the CIHL, which is Hong Kong's elite full-contact ice hockey league, they have a program suitable for players of all ages and abilities. You can also stop by the Warrior Bauer Hockey Shop in Central for all your equipment needs and skate sharpening. Check out their website for more information at ChinaHockeyGroup.com. That's ChinaHockeyGroup.com. Next, we have our friends at Accessory House Global. If you're like me and your headphones look like this, it's time to head to AccessoryHouseGlobal.com for any accessories you need for your headphones. From cables to carrying cases to new ear pads, they carry products for all the biggest brands. Head to their website at AccessoryHouseGlobal.com. Use the promo code ATP20 for 20% off your purchase. That's AccessoryHouseGlobal.com. Next, we have our pals over at Wheel Hub Asia. These guys are committed to building community and bringing accessibility to inline hockey players across Southeast Asia. They're heading into the year 2 of Hong Kong's newest inline league, 3 Inline. You can head to their website for all of your inline hockey needs at wheelhubasia.com. Enter discount code ATP10 for 10% off your purchase. That's wheelhubasia.com. Next, we have our friends at Yardley Brothers Craft Brewery. Folks, if you're a craft brew fan and you're in Hong Kong, then you absolutely have to check out Yardley Brothers' incredible selection of award-winning brews. You can head to the Beer Shack on Llama Island or the Yardley Brothers Cafe and Bistro at 62 Peel Street in Central. If you can't get out of the house, no problem. Just head to their website, yardleybrothers.hk, and you can get their delicious products delivered right to your door. That's yardleybrothers.hk. Last but not least, a huge thank you to Mr. Paul McLean at Sunset Studio in Kennedy Town for always making the podcast sound great. If you're looking for a place to jam with your band or record a new song, check them out on Instagram at sunset_studio_HK. That's sunset_studio_HK. Folks, the websites and description will be in the description. All the discount codes will be there for you. Please check them out and support our wonderful sponsors. Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Across the Pond, Hong Kong's first and only hockey podcast. My guest today comes from the great Canadian city, London, Ontario. He was drafted in 2004 by the Calgary Flames, went on to play 486 games in the NHL for 5 different teams. He's a Memorial Cup champion and one of the toughest players of his generation. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Brandon Prust. Prusty, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, bud. You look like you're staying pretty fit there. What's been going on? How are you filling up your days?
Yeah. Well, I opened up a gym here in London. Something that I kind of always wanted to do. Even when I played, I always wanted to kind of get into that side of the hockey of kind of helping out, helping the younger generation, kind of reach their full potential. So, working out was big for me. Kind of growing up, I wasn't, maybe the standout player. So I had to work hard and I had to go to training camps where I was, turning heads. And so the fitness side of it for me was big. And, I had a lot of experiences, stuff that I know I did really well at, and then stuff that I wish I did differently. So it's something that you gain knowledge from from the good things and from the things that you wish you did differently, and then you kind of pass down that knowledge to the younger generation. So that's what we've been open for about a month, so I'm training a lot of hockey teams, a lot of hockey players. We also it's also a gym for, just the regular folk as well. They can come in, we do classes and stuff. So that's probably why I look a little more in shape. You got to look the part when you have your own gym and training facility. So, and it's just, busy working out. I jump into classes every day. When you're training the hockey players, you're demonstrating a lot. So, I came home last night and I was a little sore. My calf was a little sore because I was doing a lot of running and sprinting and showing the guys how to cut properly and stuff. So, I think that's also helping as well.
That's awesome, man. And we're so lucky to have guys like you in the hockey world. If one thing I know about hockey players is they always love to give back to their communities. And, I was telling you before, I did come to London one time and had an amazing experience playing high school hockey there. I know what a great town it is as far as hockey. Tell me a little bit about your experiences when you started playing as a youngster.
Yeah, growing up in London, obviously hockey's huge here. It's huge anywhere in Canada, really, but London seems to be a really big hockey town. So basically, as soon as you can walk, you start skating. And then I didn't play really, I never played AAA growing up. I always just played kind of inner city hockey. It wasn't the most competitive hockey in London, but and then it was I was obviously a pretty good player, and people were telling me you should probably try out for AAA. It's my draft year to the OHL, so I tried out for AAA that year, and I got first cut, and I was just going to go back play inner city hockey, and I ended up playing for AA. AA coach came to me and asked me to play for them, so I played, and I had a really good year that year, but it was oh my God, I got a cat on my back, this new cat. My girl came home like
Sweet.
a week ago. She went to look for cats. So she just went. I've never been a cat guy. Look at this thing. Look at this.
Oh my gosh, what a cutie. Is that a rag doll?
Huh?
Is that a rag doll?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Scottish fold.
Oh, is it? Okay, gotcha. Well, I've got two cats upstairs right now, and I just got a dog 3 weeks ago. So you can imagine what I've been going through for the last 3 weeks.
Well, I have the dog. We have the dog, and so that was plenty enough. I've never been a cat guy, and then she started going to see cats, and I'm like, you're not bringing a cat home. And then she went last week, and I asked after when she left. I said, "Did you get a cat?" And she could tell I wasn't really upset when I said that, and so she turned around and she went back and got it, and then brought it home. So
that's unreal. Well, we've had two cats for like 7 years, and we introduced a mini beagle. We adopted a mini beagle a couple of weeks ago, and it's just been. I have a whole new respect for parents now because I've been losing a lot of sleep just with cats and a dog. So yeah. So listen, you were talking about your path there a little bit before the cat jumped on your back. You've had a lot of things jump on your back in your career. And everyone's path to the NHL is different. So I think it's really important that you share that. And it doesn't matter where you start, it always matters where you end up.
Yeah. Like, when I got cut for AAA, I just, I kind of stayed with it. So, but I missed my OHL draft year. I finally played AAA the year after, and it was like the last game of the season. The junior B team came out to watch me play, and they invited me to basically practice with them the rest of the season. And then I played junior B the next year, and I had a great year there. But the London Knights kind of thought that I was going the scholarship route, but I really wanted to play for them. And it was like a week before Knights camp, and I still hadn't got a call. And my dad was golfing, and he hit his ball, or my dad says Dale hit his ball onto his fairway, and Dale Hunter says my dad hit it onto his fairway, but they ran into each other. And my dad said, "Hey, I'm Brandon Prust, Dad. You haven't called him yet for camp." And they said, "Well, we thought he was going to scholarship route." And he goes, "No, he wants to play for you guys." I got a call later that day, invited to camp. I was in great shape. I worked my butt off all summer, and I went to camp, and they sent me down for like, I went back to junior B, but then I got called up about 2 games into the season, and I never went back. Played every game, didn't miss a game since then. After that, so and then played 3 years. Was drafted to Calgary. I knew once I got to the OHL, I knew it was kind of on me. I knew
Yeah.
the scouts were going to see you. There was no, it's in your hands at that point. Sometimes when you're coming up in minor hockey, you need the opportunity, right? You might get overlooked. There's a lot of things that need to happen. I mean, if my dad wasn't golfing that day, or the Hunters didn't golf that day, maybe I'm never invited to camp, right? So there's a lot of things that kind of need to happen. But once I got to the OHL, I knew it was in my hands if I continued to play good and do my thing. And I was drafted. I was 20 years old. I was drafted to Calgary in the third round. So
yeah.
It's a crazy story, man, because like we said, everyone's path's different, and you never know when you're going to get that opportunity. And when I was doing my research on you, we do have 2 things in common. We both played junior B, and we both absolutely love Bill Burr. So we'll talk about that a little more. We'll talk about that a little bit later. We actually saw him here in Hong Kong a number of years ago. It was fantastic. I mean, yeah, he's the first podcast I ever listened to. So I've been a big fan of his for a long time.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
You talked about your invite, getting the invite to London's camp, and you walked into an absolute juggernaut there. The London Knights at that time was just building one of the biggest and one of the most, successful junior teams of all time. And I want to thank one of your teammates there, Robbie Schremp, who made this interview happen. We're really fortunate to have Schrempy here in Hong Kong, sharing his knowledge and really, he works really hard with the kids, and you can tell his heart's in the right place right now. He's in a good spot. Things are going really well here. And so the 2004 London Knights, like I said, probably the best junior team to ever walk the face of the planet, led by Corey Perry and Schrempy. You played with some real heavy hitters. Talk to me a little bit about that 04 team and your experience there in London.
Yeah, that was kind of the perfect storm, that team coming together, because we all kind of came into that team, at the same year. I remember our first year together. Most of them were 17. I was 18. But you could just see after that first year together, we were like, okay, this team's going to be good next year. And the next year, we made it to. We lost in the semifinals. We lost in the semis to Guelph, I think, who had a pretty solid team. And then it was the year after that where we were just unstoppable. At that time, we'd had a couple years under our belt, so we were basically all veterans. We had Schrempy, David Bolin, Perry, we had Danny Fritchie, on defense, Mathot, Savret, Dan Girardi, Brian Rodney. Like we had a, like you said, a juggernaut of a team, and guys, we all had experience, right? So we were, I think that year we started 31 games to start the season unbeaten, and then
That's crazy.
And I think we lost. We went the last 2 games of the year. I wouldn't even count because everybody sat. But
Schrempy told me the same thing.
We lost 5 games up to then, and then we ended up losing the last 2 games. So but everybody was sitting those last 2 games. So and then playoffs and Memorial Cup, I think we lost 3 total games there. So I think we only lost 10 games basically all year, including playoffs and Memorial Cup. So it was a year, obviously, I think all of us remember, because that's so early in your career. So even just to start off your career that way is something that is so memorable and you hold on to, right? And especially, a lot of guys, kids that age, they don't realize that could be the best year of hockey you'll ever play, right? And that's one thing, that message sometimes I like to pass down to those junior players, because I don't know what the percentage is, but maybe a couple percent go to the NHL and have NHL careers. even if you do have an NHL career, that year is still going to be, our London Knights team this year. They got a great team. They got a chance to win it, but you feel like some kids take that for an advantage, or they take it for granted. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they shouldn't, right? Because that's something that's you're gonna hold on to for the rest of your life. And I think that's for sure what we did.
Yeah.
I know I did for my Memorial Cup year. Something you always cherish.
Yeah, you seem to be someone who really embraced your role. When you were playing junior B and making that jump up to London, was there a big change in what you were doing on the ice?
Yeah, fighting was one of them.
Yeah.
I started fighting in the OHL. I never fought. I never thought about fighting before. That was that's something that I think players have to adapt to. When I talk about David Boland, David Boland's a 60 goal scorer.
Yeah.
100, like him and Shrimpy lit up the OHL. And Bowles is a very, very skilled player, but he went, when playing with Chicago and, you're playing with Patrick Kane and Taze and all those big dogs.
Yeah.
He said, you know what, I'm going to find my role as a third line center, and I'm going to shut down other top teams. I'm going to be a bit of a rat. And he obviously still chipped in offensively.
For sure.
That's what he did, but he found his role, right? So for me, I found my role. I knew I needed to change if I'm kind of here with another player, and I want to get here above him. What am I going to add to my game? You're not adding skill. You're adding basically tenacity and a guy that never stops competing, and a guy that's going to stick up for his teammates. So that really brought my stock up, immensely. So I started fighting. One of my best buddies on the team was Chris Bade, my first year for the Knights. And I started fighting him after practice. We just would always screw around after practice, and I learned how to fight. And I started just getting into fights with kind of middleweights. I started off like low, and I was winning. And then by my second year, I was fighting all the heavyweights in the OHL, basically. And then I was good at it. I was just naturally good at it. I don't know. It's hard to teach. You have to have it, because I've tried to teach guys how to fight. I've tried to teach guys with 6'6". I tried to teach Brian Boyle how to fight. I played with him in New York, and he would get in a fight, and I was like, okay, we got a lot of work to do. Yeah. But some people have it. I knew where punches were coming from. I knew what to do. I knew how to defend myself. It's something that I just naturally picked up and that I was naturally good at. So when I added that to my game, of being able to defend my teammates and being able to, change the momentum of a hockey game whenever, I think really, really helped me out.
That's really interesting, because I want to know what your mentality was, because like I said, I played a year at junior B and I played on a really crappy team, and we had like 4 fighters on our team, and I ended up having to throw them a few times. And luckily I had a friend who was a fighter with the Mooseheads at the time, and he showed me a couple of things, just over under and just a couple of tricks. But I was obviously scared to death every time the opportunity was there. What were you scared? What was your mentality going into a fight? Because like I thought it was a blur. I couldn't control. I couldn't focus.
Yeah, and that's one thing that's a big thing is I tell guys, don't panic. You have to stay controlled. So that was one thing that I never really lost control. I was always I always knew what was going on, and I was nervous for fights for sure, especially when I was fighting big guys, but I was so confident in the way that I fought and how to protect myself. I was so good at that I was confident where, I knew I could kind of protect myself. I was never going toe to toe with these guys, right? Like, those fights where you're like, oh, who won that one? And you just be like, well, they both lost. Like they both just beat the crap out of each other.
Yeah, there was 200
no
punches.
There was no winner. They both lost. So I was never really one to fight that way. I knew I wasn't the toughest, but I knew I could be the smartest fighter, and that's basically what I did. And I outsmarted guys, and I waited for guys to make mistakes. So I was nervous because there was guys that were killers out there and guys that were just as smart as I was and just as good at fighters. But it was definitely a control thing. I was always able to control my emotions. I would like to know what my heart rate was at going into a fight, because I'm pretty sure it was pretty low. You know, I stayed calm all the time. Even when I was in trouble, I was able to regain my composure and my grip or something like that. And that really helped me. And that's a big thing, because I see guys panic, right? And they're kind of swimming and they don't know what to do. And I always had a reset button. If I lost, I would always just go back to right here and extend my arm out and be able to kind of get that distance again. So and like I said, it's a hard thing to teach. You can teach it all you want, but sometimes it's one of those things, you either have it or you don't, right?
Yeah, that's so true, man. I mean, your proof's in the pudding there.
Yeah.
You've before we move on from the Knights, you've played for a lot of fantastic coaches in your career. And how did Dale Hunter treat his players, and kind of what was his thoughts on you when you came in there and, you know, you just had to work your butt off?
Yeah, for me, it was easy because the way I played, that's a Hunter style, right? So, and that's maybe another reason why I started sticking up for guys and fighting, because they needed that. They love that edge. They like guys that they don't like, they're old school, right? So they like boys playing. They like it's just, if you're working your butt off, I mean, you might make the odd mistake, but if you're working your butt off, they respect you, and they obviously love that. They love that about me, right? I worked my butt off. I did all the dirty work. So for me, it was easier. For other players, I think it can be tough. I mean, I know Shrimpy might have had a couple tough times with them, but he also, it also helped him in the end, right? They made him stronger, and they made him a more rounded player, because they demand that of their players, right? And I saw it my whole career. Tortorella was the same way. He loves a guy like me, but he might not like, him and Gabrick butted heads, right? So Gabrick's one of the best players in the NHL, but if he wasn't playing, if he wasn't playing hard, he wasn't as effective, and Torts didn't like it, and he let him know. And I think that's kind of the Hunters, how they like it. So I always liked those hard coaches, because it was easier for me to play for them, because they just, as long as I busted my ass, I could stay in their good books. As long as, it was when I started thinking I was better than I was, and tried making those 4-foot high sauce passes cross ice or something like that. Then they'd be like, "You're sitting.
What are you
on
doing?"
the bench," and I'd be like, "Yeah, that's not my game. Let's stay to the simple stuff and do my job, and I'll be fine." So that's why I did like those. Even Michel Therrien in Montreal, he was he was kind of an old school coach, and as long as I busted my ass, I could stay in his good grace.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Gabrick. I haven't heard his name in a while, but man, when he was on, he was like, he was one of those guys that could take over a game in seconds.
Yeah. If he was busting, if he was mentally there and he was busting, working and had that confidence, he was unstoppable. And then that's him, and Torts would maybe butt heads, because sometimes he wouldn't have that. And Torts would be like, "Well, if you took over the game last game, why can't you do it today?" Right. So,
was Daryl Sutter still in Calgary when you were drafted?
He was the one that drafted me. Yeah. He was the one that drafted me. So, and Daryl was never my coach, though. He was the GM. So he never coached me. I had Mike Keenan my first year. And then I had Brent Sutter my second year. And that was when I got traded to the Rangers. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about Keenan. I mean, you obviously, coaches go out and they find players that, kind of suit their, what they want and their mentality of how the game should be played. And it seems like you just kept getting found by these guys like Sutter and Keenan and Torts and Therrien and Hunter. Is that kind of how it worked for you? Like, coaches were like, "I want that guy on my team."
Yeah, I think so. And Mike and I, we had it was good. That was my first year, but I also had I missed some time because I broke my jaw, so I missed a few
Right.
months. Cam Jansen kind of closed or basically elbowed me coming. I was
Yeah.
going to change, broke my jaw like in half, so I missed about 3 months. Then I came back and Bugard elbowed me in the head and missed some more time. So I only had him when then I got traded to Phoenix. But Mike Keenan he was good. He wasn't the same Iron Mike from the '90s. I don't think he
Yeah, a
was a
little
little more
different.
he was a little more calmed down. He was getting a little older. So, but I like Mike. He wasn't more of an X's and O's coach. He was more of philosophy. He was more.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, but you'd want to know about your family and how the home life is, and your
Hmm.
mentality. But X's and O's was more the assistant coaches. But yeah, I like Mike. Brent Sutter was a tough coach, and I didn't really get along with him too well. I was trying everything I could to kind of get in that lineup, and I was playing well, but I was kind of in and out. So, wasn't really a big fan of him. But then I got traded to New York, and I know New
Yeah.
York, they really wanted me, and they needed a guy like me. So, in my first game, I got a 2, 5, and a 10 for instigating, and
Yeah.
I fought I think Brandon Siegel in LA, and I was a little worried that for getting that penalty, I was in the box with Avery. I was like, "Fuck, Torts, not a good start." And he's like, he doesn't care. He's gonna
Yeah.
love that. Don't
Yeah,
worry. I
of
was like,
course.
okay, cool, okay. So
That's
yeah.
awesome. And then getting traded to New York. I mean, I've spoken to Barry Beck, former captain of the Rangers, and he's a guy who's here in Hong Kong. He was coached the national program here for a long time. He's still here. He's been through a lot in his career and his life, but he always speaks so fondly of how he was treated in New York, and just how fun it was to be in that city, because you had a golden ticket to wherever you wanted to go. Like, players from different sports hung out. Like, tell me a little bit about that for you. How hard was it to
I mean,
how was it to hard was it to keep the reins in?
yeah, yeah. New York was my favorite place to play. So
Yeah.
yeah, they treat their players amazing, and they still do. I still get they still reach out to do alumni stuff.
Yeah.
They're very good. They're very good that way. And when I got there, that's when I was like, okay, I'm in the NHL. Like, this
Yeah.
is like
Okay.
this is the real deal. This is they treat you well. Hey, my parents are coming in. There's a car picking them up at the airport. I
Yeah.
mean, everything's set up. Hey, you need a reservation at this restaurant that's always booked.
Yeah.
And it's like a 3-month wait list. Yeah, you want a
Yeah.
reservation? Boom, you got a table. You want to go to a show, you want to go to Saturday Night Live, which I actually never did. I sent my buddies there a couple of times, but I never went.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean but yeah, it was good, and we had a good team. We had a lot of guys that weren't married and were kind of
Yeah.
single in the city. So we were, we kept it together. We were playing good hockey. I mean,
Yeah.
we made it to semifinals the one year. We lost to Jersey,
Yeah.
but it's definitely I mean, the most fun, and the organization, just the way that they treat their players, is the best I've ever been treated, and still to
Mhm.
this day.
Yeah, it seems to be a common theme. Best players you played with in New York. I mean, you played with Hank, you played with some of, you guys had really good teams, but you were also really tough. Um, Obviously the message Torts was getting out, was being heard. Who were the guys there that were really holding that room together?
Um, yeah, I mean, we had a good solid group of guys. We were all buddies. Ryan Callahan was there.
Right.
So he was our captain. He was good. He was a good leader for us. We had Brian Boyle, myself. We had
Mhm.
Mike Rupp. My 1 year there, Mike Rupp. He was a good dressing room guy. Girardi, Stahl. Yeah, Lundqvist. Goalies are always kind of doing their own thing. We kind of leave them
Yeah.
alone. But my last year we had Brad Richards. We brought in Brad Richards there, so another good dressing room guy. But we were just we were all pretty tight. Like, and that's also another thing where you got 10 guys that are kind of living alone in the city. So we were, going for dinner, pretty much every night. It's like, hey, where are we going tonight for dinner? And we were living a life. I would say, for those guys too, that's got to be some of the most fun they've had in their NHL career. Just, you're always kind of hanging with the boys. Even when you're at home, it's almost like you're on the road. So, we had a lot of fun, and it brought us together and made us a good team. As long as, we were keeping it together, it wasn't like we were clubbing every night or something like that. I mean, we would, if we had a Saturday night where we didn't play Sunday or Monday, like, let's go out. But, we had fun though.
I've asked, I think I even asked Robbie this question, and I've asked it a few times. It seems like a really common theme. Like, you only hear it at the end when somebody wins and they're saying like, it was a special group. It was just a group that, everybody loved each other. We hung out and blah, blah, blah. But are all the teams like that? Like, every team you played for, would you look back and be like, oh yeah, we were a great group? Like, when you get to that professional level, is it like that?
No, not always. No.
Yeah.
I played on, you play on teams where you wish you were a little closer and you're kind of wondering why. And like, it's different. You're still all friends. You're still in that dressing room.
Yeah.
Your boys. Sometimes, there was selfish guys on teams that kind of, maybe tore the team apart a little bit. That's what the New York team, there was no egos. Everybody just, we made fun of each other. We all had fun. It was good. But there was definitely teams that you weren't as tight as that group. Like I said, it's hard to say, but obviously, if guys are married with kids after the rink, you go home to your family, right? So you're not really hanging out outside the rink ever, maybe other than on the road. But it doesn't always need to be that way. There's lots of married guys that you're still close with, right? And but that's the thing. Like with New York, it was like it felt like there was like 10 of us that were kind of always rolling together, right? So nobody had girlfriends or wives or something. So it was a bit of a younger team, and I think that made us tighter. But it's definitely always different. Most teams I was with we were all pretty close.
Right on. So the big payday comes. I'm a Habs fan, so when I saw that trade happen, I knew you were exactly what the team needed. They needed some grit. They needed some sandpaper in that lineup. And it was a young squad at the time. And just what you've just touched on, I don't know if you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it didn't seem like a team that was super tight. There was a lot of chaos going on. We don't have to throw anybody under the bus, but there was, a few players that might have been, stirring the pot a little bit in the dressing room and things like that. So tell me about that. You get traded to Montreal. I'm sure you didn't want to leave New York. As you said, you were having the time of your life there, but here's an opportunity to go play for a pretty storied franchise. So what was that like for you?
Well, I wasn't traded to Montreal. I was a free agent. So
sorry.
I gave New York kind of the option to offer me some more, right? And people say, oh, you left for the money. It's like, well, I left for somebody that really wants me, right? So New York, it was like, they're offering 3 years, $6 million. And I got, Montreal offered me 4 years, $10 million.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, I'll even just give me that extra year. I'll take 4 years, $8 million and stay in New York. Cause I did want to stay there. But, if that love's not there, if it's not like, we don't, it's like, how bad do you want me? So I got this team Montreal that finished last. I think they were last in the league. Close to maybe bottom of the league that year. And I knew they needed a guy like me. They needed a dressing room guy. They needed someone, a team guy. They needed that grit, someone that's going to fight and stick up for players. So I signed that. I signed that deal, and that was one of my goals, was to go in there and kind of change that locker room around and kind of bring that experience those 3 years in New York, that experience that I gained, and you know, a couple playoff runs, you know, kind of turned into a leader in that New York dressing room. I wanted to bring that to Montreal, and I like to feel that I did a good job there. You know, we made the playoffs the first year. I think it was the second year. We went to the semifinals. I think it was the second year we went to the semis. So, you know, we climbed quickly. We ended up having a pretty good team, and we had, you know, some young guys coming in that ended up developing into pretty solid players. So yeah, that was I mean, I love Montreal. It was a great, love playing for that city, love playing for that team. Another great organization. So it was good. I wish we could have won something there. You know, we got close to 1 year. Lost to my old team, the Rangers, in the semifinals. But you know, we had a good run, and I really believe that was you know, if Carey Price doesn't get hurt that year, that you know, we go to the finals. So it was tough, but great experience for me. And you know, it was sad leaving New York. That day when I signed with Montreal on July 1st was kind of the weirdest day of my life, because I was so happy. I was, you know, I signed this great contract. I was going to Montreal Canadiens, one of the best franchises in all the sports.
Yeah.
But I was leaving New York. And I was leaving a lot of my friends in New York. So I was so sad and so happy at the same time. It was so weird. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I was so happy, so sad and so happy.
Yeah.
Never had that. I remember I had so many people at my house. We were up at my parents' place, and I had everybody was coming to visit me, you know, all my family, all my friends, everybody was having a party. And at one point I went upstairs to my bedroom, and I was just laying on my bed, and I was just like, oh my God, this is overwhelming, because the feelings I had inside me, I've never experienced. Just crazy to be so happy and so sad at the same time. Is very weird. And so I'll always remember that. I'll always remember that feeling.
I'm sure you'll never forget that, man. So leaving a city like New York, where you can kind of blend in with the crowd a little bit, maybe celebrity wise, being famous in a big city, what was the difference like in Montreal?
Yeah, Montreal, you don't blend in. There's no blending in there. Everybody knows your business. Everybody,
Yeah.
I mean, you're eating breakfast at a little diner, and you know, people are coming up, and you know, which is good. In Montreal, they definitely don't really care about your personal space.
Yeah.
People want your attention. It's an honor for you to play for this team. We're not honored to have you. It's your privilege, you know, playing here. So it's a different mindset that way. But you know, rightfully so. It is an honor to play for that team. And play in that city and that organization. So, but yeah, everybody knows what you're doing. And then, especially for my wife at the time, you know, she was getting pretty famous as well. So everybody definitely knew kind of, you know, everything that was going on, and everybody knows who you are there. But so there's no break in that. But it's all good. I enjoyed my time there in Montreal. It was definitely some great playoff runs. The atmosphere there, and I love the city. I love the food there, the restaurants. I was definitely very, very lucky man to play in New York and Montreal, two great cities.
Absolutely. And you did mention Carey Price. I did want to ask you about him. Is what's gone on in his career has just been, you know, it's been a shame to see the way it's ended for him. And the team was just, that team needed to build when he was healthy, and they tried a few times, and then like you said, he got hurt that year. And then it seemed like all of a sudden his career was rejuvenated again a couple of years ago, and then injuries again. And what was he like as a team? What was he like as a teammate, and what was it like to play in front of such a world-class goalie like him?
Yeah, I mean, one of the best guys I definitely ever played with. Still still in touch with him every once in a while. And, you know, it's sad he never got his Stanley Cup. Definitely deserved one. And I mean, that's sports, right? Injuries are sports. It happens to the best of them. And unfortunately, Carey's just he's got those lingering issues, right, which come with those injuries, and especially for goalies, right? If you keep making that movement, you know, anything in your knees and hips is really gonna linger on a goalie. So, but definitely one of my favorite teammates, and definitely one of my favorite goalies to play in front of. You know, if you had a mistake, if you made a mistake, you still got Carey behind you to maybe bail you out. So he definitely did that for us a lot, which is, you know, him going down in the playoffs that year when we made that run. It hurts the team. It hurts the team in front of you because, you know, your mindset's up here, right? You're like, okay, we're playing this solid hockey and we got this goalie behind us. And, you know, Tokarski came in and stood on his head and played amazing. But we didn't play as good in front of them, I don't feel, because our confidence dropped down, right? And we were a little more nervous, and we played a different type of hockey, which wasn't our hockey. And so even though people say, oh, well, you know, Tokarski came in and stood on his head, which he did. But our level of hockey changed when Pricer went out. And it's something that, you know, you try not to do and you talk about as much as possible. Okay, we don't change our game. We're you know, we lost our best player, but we don't change our game. But subconsciously, everybody does, and it's something that you know, really affected us. And I feel like that was you know, our year to win it. I feel we had the team to do it. We had all the pieces, and it definitely sucks, and something, you know, you always kind of think about what are the what ifs. That's one of the what ifs, you know. And anyway, nothing you do. But Carey, one of my good friends, one of my good buddies that I you know, always cherished our friendship together. And you know, he's more, you know, he's a little more quiet, but I always poked at him to try and get him a little out of his shell. And always, whether it's attack him in practice and or off the ice, I always liked, he was a freaking strong man. So I'd always try and get, when we wrestled, I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's a bear.
Well, to be honest, like I told you, I've been a Habs fan my whole life. And there was like probably like 2018, 2019, when you kind of saw that. I know they made that really crazy run during COVID, and that was kind of like just a crazy hockey year. I don't think anything went according to plan. But like I was, as a Carey Price fan, I was thinking, we got to trade this guy, man. Like, we got to trade him now when he's healthy. We can rebuild the team, give Carey a chance to win a Stanley Cup somewhere else. What are your thoughts on that? Because oftentimes guys, like, you know, you'll see a guy like Ray Bourque at the end of his career go and win a Stanley Cup, but he didn't win it in Boston. So is that something that you kind of owe a guy, or is that kind of like, some guys would never want to do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Tough. I don't know what happened. I don't know what transpired there. Like, normally with a player like that, you would kind of ask them, hey, do you want us to send you something? Like, what do you want? And Carey might have said, I don't know. Carey might have said, you know, I want to stay here. I don't want to leave. Maybe he said that. I don't know. Maybe Montreal was just like, no, Pricer's our goalie for life, and we didn't trade him. I don't know. But I would say, me being a GM and that kind of being a thought, I would definitely go to them and say, what do you want? Right. Because we can get some freaking draft picks for you for sure. Right. We can get a young player and some draft picks. So that's a tough decision. And I mean, again, you think about the what ifs, right? And
of course,
there's nothing you can do now.
No, it's just sad for me, because I love the guy, and I think he's such a class guy, and he still is. Just the way, you know, he speaks out now, and the things he's been going through, and he's been really honest with the media and with people. And I have a lot of admiration for guys like that. So it's just a shame. Before we get to the things that you're doing now in your life, I've been fortunate to talk to some pretty tough guys, including guys like Dennis Bomby and like guys who can really chuck them. Who are some of your toughest fights, and why were they tough? Now, was it just size? Was it their style? Was it their tenacity? What was it?
Well, if you're like kind of on paper, some of the toughest, like I fought Steve McIntyre in Edmonton.
Monster.
He was a monster. He was a killer. He was
Yeah.
destroying everybody. Um, those guys were obviously, and that was a one-off. I knew I didn't have to fight him very often. And usually I had a big tough guy kind of on my team that would fight him. But yeah, I did fight him once. I fought some big boys in the minors too, like Rocky Thompson, DJ King. I was fighting everybody in the minors. Those are some fights that people don't even know about. The fights that when you're messing around in the jungle. I led the league my first year in the AHL. I led the league in fighting, 34 fights. And so that's basically freaking every other game I was fighting. But in the NHL, it's guys like those rivalry teams, right? Like when I was in Calgary, Rick Rippon and Darcy Hordichuk, and then playing for New York, you're fighting Lucic and well, Jansen was in Jersey, right? Jansen, those guys, Bolton. And then Montreal, you're fighting Chris Neal, and these guys you're matched up against those guys every night. They're doing the same job as you, so you don't know when it's coming. You don't know when they might be coming after you, or when you might be going after them if the team needs a spark, or if they're running around, it's go time. So Zenon Konopka was another guy when I played for the Rangers. He was playing for the Islanders. I probably fought him for I don't know how many times in my career. It got to be, I'd say 6 times. 6, 7 times. I don't know. So those are the guys. Even if they might not be the number one heavyweight in the league, those are the guys you're battling against day in and day out, right? In those rivalry series. So those are always the ones that you got probably 2 a year at least with those guys, right? 2 or 3 a year. Who knows how far it goes? And so those I would say were kind of my most memorable fights. The most intense fights, the ones that kind of meant something that could change stuff around. But I had those one-offs with those big heavyweights every once in a while as well. So but yeah, I would say obviously Steve McIntyre. My first year is probably my 4th NHL game, and Steve McIntyre just destroyed Dustin Boyd in the corner, freaking almost killed him. So I had no choice. I was dropping my gloves and going after him. So, but it was a big fight for me. I remember Mike Keenan came and gave me a hug in the dressing room because I kind of hurt my arm, my arm kind of holding out. I kind of strained my arm, so I went to the dressing room to kind of ice, and Mike Keenan came in and gave me a big hug. So that was definitely a memorable one, and one that kind of solidified my spot on the team there.
Well, everyone has so much respect for guys like you and guys that drop the mitts, and the respect amongst fighters is something that a lot of people don't understand. And especially being over here in Asia, people often ask me about hockey and how can you love a sport that's so violent, and people are fighting each other, like people are trying to take people's heads off. It's like, but not all the time people are trying to take people's heads off. They're trying to separate them from the puck, or they're trying to pick up for a teammate. Or guys like you'll fight a guy and you'll tap him on the way to the box and be like, good fight, man. Like, so it's kind of hard to explain that to people.
Yeah, it's hard to explain that. The guy that I fought, if I saw him after the game, he'd be the guy that I'd have a beer with and shoot the shit with, right?
Yeah.
The guy that we just went to war. You have that mutual respect, and you're doing it for the game. It is tough to explain to people that don't really understand the game, and the game's changing. The game's changing a bit. It's not too barbarian anymore. But I feel you still need that policing in your game, right? I think it should be a part of the game all the time, and people that don't understand it, then tell them not to watch it.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That was my next question. Do you think teams these days still need to have an enforcer or two in their lineup to be successful?
I think it's good to have someone with an edge and someone that will police. I think the role of the enforcer is slowly leaving. You know, you need to be able to play the game. You need to,
Yeah,
the teams need to be able to roll 4 lines. You know, you need to be good. Need to be able to skate out there and move the puck, and so that just tough guy role, I think, is definitely leaving the game.
mm-hmm.
It's pretty much gone from the game. So it's yeah, but I think you're always going to have the guy with the edge, and they always want to have guys that can still throw them and still put some fear into the other teams to tell them not to screw around, right? I think that's even
Right.
more important than having an enforcer, because
Right.
you know, it's like, you know, Brad Marchand, Ryan Reeves isn't really going to go after Marchand. Marchand doesn't have to fight him, but you know,
Mhm.
Max Domi, he's got to fight Max Domi, right? So
Yeah.
you got to have guys like that, that are that size, or you know, they're not, you know, 6'5" bullies, because those, nobody really has to fight them anymore, right? They can say,
Right.
yeah, beat it, but so you need those guys that are kind of that middleweight, and can still chuck them to put some fear into the other team to not screw around.
Yeah, 100%. You mentioned a couple guys there. So important for the Leafs to have. They've needed it for a long time, and bringing in guys like Domi and Bertuzzi, guys that just got, to play the game the right way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I've asked this question quite a few times as well. I want to know your thoughts. Like, I've been reffing for a long time, and I agree with the what you said about you need guys that can police the game out there, guys that can put some fear into somebody so they don't cheap shot. What are your thoughts on the instigator rule?
Yeah. I never liked it, obviously, because I got a few of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like they're gonna keep that obviously in, because they're trying to bring down fighting a bit.
Mhm.
So I think it's something that's gonna obviously stay. I don't really like it, but it's also not bad, because you know what? If I body check somebody and make a really clean hit, if you want to come fight me, then you got to take a penalty for it, right?
Yeah.
So I don't mind it that way, because you know, I would even sometimes it would be 3-0, and a guy would come to me and say, "Hey, do you want to fight?" And I'd be like, "Dude, we're up 3-0. I can't fight you, but if you go hit somebody, I'll come fight you, right? If you do something, I'll come fight you." Obviously, I'm not going to get an instigator, because they're going to be ready for it. I just have to be like, look at them, and they're going to want to fight. But that's something that is, hey, if I want to fight you, if you make a clean body check, and I want to police that and say stop doing that, then hey, you're gonna have to take a 2-minute penalty, and then I'll fight you. So I don't mind it that way, because sometimes I saw too much fighting going on, like where, you know, guys would just make a nice clean body check, guy head down across the middle, hey, step up. Maybe he shouldn't have to fight every time he wants to hit somebody. So it's not a bad rule to have that instigator in there to say, hey, if you want to fight this guy. I remember Dion Phaneuf playing with Dion. It was like, what's this guy going to fight every game? He hits somebody every game. You can't fight every game. So if you want to fight him, then you gotta put your team down for 2 minutes, right? So I don't mind it. I don't mind it that way. There's kind of pros and cons of them, but it's an okay rule.
Yeah. My problem with it as a referee, I just wish there could be a gray area there. I wish the referee could be able to make that decision, because like you said, there's often times where someone's just being an idiot after a clean hit, and then they just run after a guy for no reason. Hockey's a violent sport, and if you're cutting across the ice and you get hit with a nice hard hit, you just take it, and you shouldn't. And you should be penalized. You should get a penalty if you go after a guy. But there's other times where, guy gets elbowed in the face, or like a slash or a spear or something really dirty, and you're like, no.
Yeah. I know it should be. You should be able to make that judgment call. I think that should be a good thing. Refs have to read the game, right?
Yeah,
That's what
that's
makes
what you.
that's what makes refs good, right? I can always tell. I always knew a good ref because
Yeah,
he knew the situation in the game. He knew it was a 2-1 game with 5 minutes left. He's not going to call a freaking little tap hook
yeah.
at that point in the game down 200 feet from the other net or something like
Hmm.
that, right? Like,
Hmm.
so it's got to be a ref's judgment call, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
The other,
that's something. Is that not really what refs do on an instigator? Is kind of make that.
I
All
don't
right.
think they have that ability anymore. It's just an automatic. Once you attack a guy who's not willing to fight, it's an automatic. And the other
Yeah.
thing, like I just wish the onus could be on the referee because you got the best referees in the world ref in that sport, and
Yeah.
they should be trusted to make that call. But the
Yeah.
other one, the one that really pisses me off too, is the puck over the glass. Um, I know why they did it because guys were taking advantage, tired bodies on the ice, killing a penalty, whatever it is, shooting it over the glass. But there's so many times that it happens when it's so blatantly an accident.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
intention to delay the game. The puck's bouncing, it goes off a guy's stick.
Yeah.
He hits it out of the air, for God's sake. Sometimes it's not
Yeah.
even on the ice, or like you're
Yeah.
down a guy and the puck's bouncing. Now you're down 5-on-3. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things where I think there needs to be some trust in referees, and
Yeah.
yeah, you're not always going to get it right, but it doesn't mean you have to
Yeah.
punish them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not a bad call as well. Yeah. If it looks intentional, or, even if you're trying to shoot it off the top of the glass, you got to be
Yeah,
careful. If you miss it, then it's a penalty, right? It's like something
yeah,
like that. If you're really trying to, yeah, yeah, it's something that they could look into for sure. The only thing is you don't want to get that into. And I hate how they kind of review a lot of things, especially like in the OHL when I'm at the Knights games. They review a lot and it slows the
yeah,
game right down. It
yeah,
just
yeah.
stops. So you don't want them having to go, all right, let's take a look at this one and see if it was accidental or,
Hmm.
because one thing, another thing I'm starting to hate is all the reviewing, right?
Yeah,
You love the review on some things, but especially in the OHL, like sometimes they're sitting there and they're reviewing a play for like 5 minutes. It's like
yeah,
half the crowd's sleeping now. They're playing like, let's go, right? So
yeah.
that's another thing. I'm hating the, you like the reviews, but I don't know. Sometimes it's starting to slow the game down a little too much.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. I mean, just a couple of ones that really bug me. I wanted to get your opinion on.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
want to
and
move on to
unfortunately, our manpower, the two of us, I don't think
yeah.
we're making any rule changes soon.
No. I spoke to Carey Fraser. I had him on the podcast and talked
Oh
about
yeah,
some of those things. And if he can't help me change that rule, then nobody can.
yeah, yeah.
So before we get to the end, I want to talk to you a little bit about your foundation. I want to talk to you a little bit about mental health in sports because I know you've been a guy who's fought his whole life. How have you been able to, like, you seem very healthy. Did you battle any issues like with depression and mental health based on concussions and things like that throughout your career?
I, it's hard it's hard because I think sometimes can be in denial of any mental health issues, and I'm one of those people that kind of like, one of those, hey, I'm a man. I
Yeah,
don't reach out to people if I have any issues. I battle through it myself, right? I go,
yeah,
hey, man up and get through it or whatever, which is not always the right call. But I've been pretty fortunate I've had concussions, but I don't have a lot of lingering effects. I don't think I have many lingering effects. The hardest part for me was retirement and and finding that purpose again, right? So I think
right.
that's the hardest thing for an NHL player. I wasn't depressed retiring from the game. I was very happy with my career and what I accomplished, and I accomplished
Yeah,
more than I ever dreamed that I could. And I had, so it wasn't that. It was a change stepping away from the game, but it was losing my purpose in life, basically, right? It was always hockey. I was a hockey player. That was my purpose, to try and help a team, to try and win a championship, to try and make fans get up off their seats. And then when that's gone, the hardest thing, and you know, I kind of realized that because then COVID hit and you're sitting on your couch, and yeah, I think that's the depression time for me was kind of after that retirement. And you go from traveling the world, playing in the NHL, eating freaking sushi, and then you retire, and then COVID hits and you're sitting in your house for 2 years. And then, you know, now I'm happier than I'm back to kind of, I think, the mental state that I was when I was playing. Now that I have this gym, it's a little more, I don't know, it's hard to say. It's a little more stressful because, you know, you don't have that, you know, I didn't just sign on a dotted line and I just got to perform and I'm going to get my money. It's, you know, it's more of a hustle, but I find my, you know, I have a purpose again, training athletes and trying to make people better. And I think that's the biggest thing for me was finding that again, finding that purpose. And I feel my mental state is back to good and back to kind of how I was, you know, in my best days. So, but I think that was the hardest part for me was kind of after retirement and you know, just with that change. And I think that's the biggest thing for every hockey player. And that's something that I would love to kind of pass on that knowledge to the younger generation, is just find a purpose as quick as you can. Don't sit around for too long. So it's good. I'm back up and running and doing this gym and training. So it's a lot of fun, and I look forward to continuing to grow with it.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And I know it's not easy to talk about stuff like that, but it's like you said, it's really important. And I think it goes a long way. So I'm happy that you've been able to get through that and you're in a good spot. Your foundation, talk to me a little bit about that and some of the things that you're doing to give back.
Yeah, well, I have Prusty for Kids is the foundation. We raised a lot of money. You know, since COVID happened, everything's kind of been put on halt. It's kind of affected a lot of things, and but we raised over $1 million for children's children in need, mostly here in London. We donated a lot to the Children's Hospital. We've granted a lot to other children's charities in and around the city. So that was definitely something that's was a lot of fun for me and something I'm very proud of. And hopefully we can kind of get it up and running again someday.
Sounds great, man. I really do appreciate you giving me so much time. I do have a final segment called Overtime where I'm going to ask you 10 rapid fire questions. I ask everybody the same 10 questions. They're just generic. You got 2 choices. Give me the first one that comes to mind. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, here we go. Habs or Leafs?
Habs.
Lemieux or Gretzky?
Gretzky.
Probert or Domi?
Probert.
Waugh or Brodeur?
Waugh.
Or Lidstrom?
Or.
Claude Lemieux or Brad Marchand?
Claude.
Yzerman or Messier?
Mess.
Bowman or Burns?
Burns.
Ron or Don?
Don.
Shootout or no shootout?
Shootout.
All right. Thank you so much. I got one final question just for you. You were awarded the Jacques Beauchamp Molson Award, voted by the Montreal media as the team's unsung hero. As a Habs fan, I couldn't agree more with that decision. You brought so much grit and to a team that really needed it at the time. What did winning that award mean to you, and why was it important?
Yeah, that was definitely a very cool award to get, and it's important because it's a fan voted award. So to know that you've won over the hearts of Habs Nation is a pretty proud moment, and something I'll never forget. So yeah, it's definitely pretty cool. I think that's what makes it most memorable is it's the fan voted award, and I'll cherish that one as well for the rest of my life.
Awesome, man. You certainly won me over, and I hope everyone listening goes back and takes a look at your career, because it's really something special, and really happy for you that you're doing well. And thank you for giving me so much time.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me, and get some sleep over there. I'm gonna go start my day.
All right, buddy. That was Across the Pond, and that's a wrap.
Thank you to our amazing sponsors, the China Hockey Group, Wheel Hub Asia, AccessoryHouseGlobal.com, Yardley Brothers Beer, and of course, Sunset Studio. Check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Across the Pond HK. Email us, send in your comments and questions to the show at any time at acrossthepondhk@gmail.com.